Alright guys, I've been having a ton of fun going through and making these videos where in this video series what we've been doing is we've been comparing average draft position data from high stakes leagues in 2020 to that same data in 2021 and trying to look across both hitters and pitchers and seeing guys that have risen the furthest with their value and guys that have fallen extremely far, and see what the rationale is behind this. Are we looking at some exciting prospects that are rising up based on a small sample and we think they're going to be able to progress their game with age? Or are we going to be looking at some players that quite possibly just had a bad year, maybe just had a good year at the same time, and they are seeing their value drastically bump up? And now, obviously, the reason that I am making these videos is because the 2020 baseball season was ridiculous. I mean, it was such an outlier season where you pretty much, in my opinion, are not going to be able to get too many things drawn in terms of a valid data to make strong conclusions with. So really, let's try to evaluate these pitchers that rose significantly over the past 12 months and go, is it something they did? Is this just natural progression that we are banking in? Or is it off a limited sample? All right, so now our first pitcher that we are going to be bringing up is going to be definitely not a prospect, not close to it. Let's talk about Darvish right now, 34 years old, going to play with the San Diego Padres. And I'll say that's the one nice thing about Darvish this year is that he's going to be playing on one of the best teams in baseball. Obviously, that makes a difference if we are going to be talking about his wins and just the overall structure of the season. But if we are looking at Darvish, one thing I don't understand is where he is currently being drafted. I mean, I think it's kind of ridiculous, the price that you have to spend on Darvish right now as a late second round pick. Because if we go through his entire Major League Baseball career up until this point, I mean, ultimately, he's been kind of just disappointing. And I know people are going to say, Mason, do you not remember his 2020 season where he came out and he had under a 1.0 whip? It was sitting at about 0.96, and he had a 2.23 FIP at the same time, 1.22 strikeouts per inning, but it was only with 76 innings, and we know that is the number one thing that we are going to have to look for. And whenever I had Michael on, and Michael is definitely smarter than me, he went, Mason, you're overlooking the fact that Darvish had a fantastic end to his 2019 season at the same time. So you can throw that in there, but I'm just looking at his overall career and going, Darvish is not the pitcher that he was in 2020. I can't buy into the fact, regardless of whatever position this is, regardless of whatever sport we are talking about, that a 34-year-old athlete took this long in his major league career to finally put it together. Because if we go through and if we look at seasons where Darvish has had his whip under 1.0, let's list them off. 2020. That is it. If we go through and look at where Darvish has had his whip over 1.1, you have 2012, 2014, 2016, 2017, 2018. So you have a large sample of Darvish being a below average Major League Baseball starter, where you have a very small sample of 76 innings where he's looked like an ace. So I'm going to say with Darvish, I know that I'm kind of beating a dead horse at this point. I've talked about this so much now. I want to be avoiding where we can. I'm still not going to be drafting, even with Michael coming out and saying, Mason, you're overlooking the fact that he did have a great stretch in 2019. Still, I want to look at the 6 or 7 years of subpar performances that we've seen and go, it's not worth the second round pick it's going to cost. Okay, so now let's go to a pitcher that has had a massive, massive jump up, and this is actually someone that I'm willing to buy into his new price, and this is Brandon Woodruff, and right now he's a 28-year-old pitcher for the Brewers. And why I'm a little bit more willing to buy into Brandon's overall average draft position is because if we are looking at sample sizes, 2019 is really the only one that we have to go off of. And by no means was it fantastic, but it was okay. I mean, he had about a 3.5 ERA. He had 121 innings pitched. He had 1.2 strikeouts per inning. and a 1.1 whip. So I know those numbers aren't necessarily fantastic. I know they're not jumping off the page, but then we get to 2020 where the whip is hovering about 1.0. The ERA is down about 3.0, and he's at 1.25 strikeouts per inning. So I know that y'all are saying, Mason, you just talked about 2020 not meaning anything and that we need to devalue the statistics that we got from that year. Well, what I am saying is in the case of you, Darvish, what we need to be doing is we need to be looking at all the other statistical years that we had of him being a subpar pitcher compared to his second round average draft position. Then we go over to Brandon, and really, we don't have any of that bad data to look at. We only have the good stuff, and you're going to be getting him at a much cheaper cost. So yeah, I'm completely fine paying that price. All right, so now our next pitcher, I know people are going to absolutely hate me for this. He just signed a $100 million contract for the Los Angeles Dodgers, and this is going to be Trevor Bauer. And yes, I know, I mean, quite possibly the best 2020 season we are ever going to see, where his whip was under 0.8. He had a 1.73 ERA. He had 1.37 strikeouts per inning with 73 innings pitched. And I know that is an elite season. I mean, if you could guarantee anything close to that this upcoming year, he would be the #1 overall pick in fantasy baseball drafts. But right now, he's going at the late first, early second. And the reason for this is because, very similar to you, Darvish, I mean, we have a large sample of Trevor Bauer not being the pitcher he was in 2020, where if you look through his entire career and you go, okay, so let's try to identify where the whip is going to lie. And if we look and just look at the seasons where his whip was over 1.20, that was 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, and 2019. The only 2 years it was under 1.2 was in 2018 and in 2020. And I know he's in his prime. I know you can make the argument saying, but he just now got it together, which is kind of valid. But when we go through at the same time, I mean, his ERA has been over 4.0 in 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, and 2019. So I am just extremely hesitant to go out there and spend my first round pick on a pitcher like Trevor Bauer when we don't necessarily know what we are spending it on. I mean, this is one reason the Mets weren't willing to just completely just empty the bank for Trevor Bauer, because there is a large sample of Bauer not being a bad pitcher. I know I said Yu Darvish was a subpar pitcher at the same time, but no, they're not bad pitchers in those seasons, and they're not going to be bad pitchers this upcoming year. But what I'm saying is I think they are a poor investment to make at their current draft position. So Trevor Bauer and Yu Darvish are both going to be guys that I am looking to avoid in 2021. Now, thank you guys. I really hope y'all enjoyed the video. I hope y'all got something from it. As always, if you did, go down there, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. And yeah, that's it. I'll see y'all with the video tomorrow.